All right. So this is the video for the plant responses for hormones. But I also have some short videos that I want to call to your attention on the website. And so if you look here, my lecture will be below the PowerPoint, but below that, there are some videos that are available on YouTube. Looks like one of them might have faded away from YouTube. You don't have to look at every one of them, but they're really quick. And I would suggest looking at most of them. They give a pretty darn good, quick idea of some of the types of tropisms, such as thigmotropism, rapid movements, geotropism, phototropism. So take your time and do go through the ones that are there. They'll give you a good support for the kinds of things we're talking about in this PowerPoint. So plants don't move like animals, obviously. They don't have the ability to move in the same way, but they do have the ability to move, and they have the ability to move a lot in response to their environment, just not quickly in most cases. But in some cases, they can move very quickly, like the Venus flytrap slapping shut on a fly that triggers its a prey animal that's triggered by these hairs on the inside of these highly modified leaves. That's called a fast response. And there's some examples like the sensitive plant is another fast response. But we're going to be talking about hormonal responses, which are much more gradual, things that aren't rapid like the previous two. And we call these things hormones. And hormones are different kinds of specific chemicals that cause a particular change in growth response. And so we eat hormones in plants all the time. And some people use the word hormone like it's a scary thing. And we need hormones in our bodies to do normal things. Plants need hormones to do their things. And if you eat plant hormones, the vast majority of them your body digests without any reaction whatsoever. And if it's possible that a hormone from a plant could impact you, you'd probably have to eat way, way, way too much to make an impact. So for example, there are estrogen-like hormones in certain plants, but you'd have to probably eat, 10 pounds of yams a day for 2 months before it started to have an impact. Not realistic. So don't worry about hormones in plants causing problems in humans. That's just scare tactics used by people who don't know what the heck they're talking about. So the 5 categories that you need to be familiar with in this PowerPoint are the auxins, gibberellins, ethylene, cytokinin, and abscisic acid. We'll go through different types of actions of each of these. And we'll talk about them in terms of specific types of responses. So you need to know the types of responses as well, such as phototropism, the response to light, or movement turning on the basis of light. So tropism literally means to turn. It's a Greek word or Greek origin for turning. And we know that plants grow in relation to light quantity as well as quality. And that doesn't mean there's good light versus bad light. There's just efficient light versus inefficient light. So when I say light quality with respect to a plant, blue light is high quality light because plants can photosynthesize with blue light. Green light would be low quality light because plants can't efficiently photosynthesize with green light. So how much light is there and what is the quality or color of that light? If you get light from above, you generally have even equal growth. The plant generally is well shaped. If you get from one side, the plant turns or bends and tends to grow toward the light, unless it's too much light for a plant that prefers some shade, where it might avoid excessive light. But plants do have the ability to turn with the sun each day. There are many examples of plants that can turn and follow the sun. The hormones that are controlling phototropism are called auxins. Auxins. And an auxin is involved in cell growth. It makes cells grow longer. And auxins are light sensitive, and so when a plant cell is exposed to light, the auxin level is going to decrease. The side that is in the shade is going to increase. So if I have light to one side, let's say this is my my stem, and you can see it's brighter over on this side over here. You can see all the bright coming in through the window. Well, I'm getting more light on this side, so I'm not going to get less growth on this side and more growth on this other side. And as it grows more on the other side, it's going to push that stem towards the light. You get more growth away from the light, pushing the plant growth towards the light. And that's how auxins work with phototropism. Auxins do other things as well. Auxins are complicated, involved in a lot of stuff, but with phototropism, the side that gets the light, the auxins are being destroyed. So these cells are growing slower. The cells that don't get direct sunlight are growing faster, and it's pushing towards the light. All right? So auxins collect on the side away from the sun, causes the cells to grow longer away from the sun. And there's also another thing that auxins control, apical meristem dominance. Because plants are having their cells grow longer, faster with auxins, apical meristems and growing buds, growing tips of plants produce a lot of auxins. So what does that do? It causes the stem to elongate. You're growing a new stem. Auxins do that as well. And because that auxin is being produced, that auxin is being released from the apical meristem down through the stem. It diffuses down through the stem, and all of the other axillary buds, the potential apical meristems, are just sitting there going, well, there's plenty of auxin. They got it under control over there. Let's take it for granted. Let's just take a break. We don't need to do anything. But if that apical meristem is eaten by an insect or a deer, or pruned off by a gardener, becomes damaged in any way, it'll stop making auxin because it's no longer there, or it's damaged. And so now these these axillary buds will see there's no more auxin, and they will start growing. So that's what we call apical meristem dominance. The plant tends to grow longer with the apical meristem growing the most, and the axillary buds waiting until the apical meristem gets far enough away that they wake up. And apical meristem dominance varies tremendously from plant species to plant species, and that's why you have such variety in different shapes of plants, because of the way auxins are perceived in the growth pattern. So some plants with very low apical dominance are short, bushy plants. With very high apical dominance can be more like vines, long vine-type plants, and everything in between. Auxins can also be used as a chemical pruning agent. A great example of that is a chemical that I used to use with a buddy of mine when we cared for different properties, and we would do the garden. I would help him when we had stuff. It was really his gig, not mine, but there was a very rich client of his that did weddings and things at their estate. And when there was a wedding coming up, we would have to get a lot of work done. And one of the things that we would clearly know, hey, a wedding's coming up. We can't do everything, 2 days before the wedding. We have to plan it for months. And so we have to put in the right flowers so they'll bloom at the right time. We'll have to do all kinds of things. And one of the biggies is pruning hedges. The manicured hedges down along the sides of the walkways, they need to look perfect on the day of the wedding. So you go through and you prune them maybe 2 or 3 weeks in advance. And if you do it that far in advance, by the time the wedding comes around, there's little pokies sticking up. The plants are starting to grow again. After pruning, you're triggering the axillary buds to grow, right? And you just took off the apical meristems by hedging, or clipping the hedges and getting them all nice and neat and looking exactly the way you want them. So how can you get them to just sit there and not grow? Well, you spray auxin on them. You prune them, you get them all looking beautiful, and you spray some auxin on them. And then all of those axillary buds don't realize that the apical meristems were all just pruned off because there's plenty of auxin around. And you can't do that too many times. There's a limit, but certainly you can do that for an event like I just mentioned. You get your hedge perfect, you spray auxin, it chemically prunes it basically. It chemically says it's on hold. It thinks that the other axillary, or so the other buds are growing, and so the axillary buds don't grow. Holds it in place. Great technique. NAA is that material, naphthalene acetic acid. Don't worry about trying to say that, but NAA, if you're interested in the auxin, the chemical simulated auxin that is used for chemical pruning.